Welcome to the European Show. My name is Abby Bella, and this is your hottest European political tea and the coolest continental analysis. And now we come to what is known in the United Kingdom as the police bill. It is the police crime sentencing and courts bill that is going through the House of Commons at the moment. It's had its second reading. This is part of the process for it to get legalized. It will go through some revisions now. So it's had like a first, second reading, then it will go to the House of Lords. And it was passed through with a majority in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom. And it is a very seriously dangerous, detrimental, ridiculous, and medieval bill, really, and that's insulting to people from the Middle Ages, and for that I apologize if you're watching in the Middle Ages, which apparently seems to be the United Kingdom these days. What is wrong with this bill? Everything is wrong with this. This is like the intellectual love child of Priti Patel. Priti Patel is the Home Secretary in the United Kingdom. She's part of the Boris Johnson government. Let's not forget, Boris Johnson was one of the people who ran the Brexit campaign, which outright lied to the people of the United Kingdom about the type of money that was being paid out to the European Union, about what kind of money they would get if they voted for Brexit, and a bunch of other stuff. All of these lies are confirmed. They're fact-checked. This is like a real thing. And in fact, the Brexit campaign has admitted to spreading those lies already over time. But yet somehow in this late capitalist period in our history, people like this still get voted in to be prime minister of the country that they effed over. I can't speak. That they effed over with their lies and their selfishness and their money grubbing ways. And that is who Boris Johnson is. And Priti Patel is a very important part of his government. And she loves policing, and she loves authority, and she loves order. We all remember BLM being a major thing globally this last summer. It's still a major thing. It's still going strong, but I suppose in like the grander public eye kind of way, it was like really, there was such a big push in the summer of 2020. The United Kingdom was no exception. There were BLM protests outside of the Houses of Parliament. There were people out there everywhere in London, dominating the streets of London, wanting justice, speaking for themselves. And this was the entire United Kingdom community, regardless of whether you're left or right. People feel so strongly about this. And a part of the BLM renaissance, if you will, this summer was taking into account our history and also doling out justice to statues. And that's a whole other interesting issue about the kind of, what statues really represent in the collective imagination, and why it's so important to topple them. But that's for another show. When it comes to the United Kingdom, a lot of statues fell. Because a lot of these people in the United Kingdom who have statues erected to their memory are genocidal maniacs with a slavery past. And the reason why they were so powerful is because they were colonialists. And that is part and parcel of the history and the heritage of the United Kingdom, whether we like it or not. You can call it, it's just the Commonwealth. We all love each other. Canada loves us. No, that was like, you colonized these places, and for a while, you kind of got away with it because we lived in a different time, but now history is coming back to judge you. And I don't mean you, the British people. I mean you, as in the powers that be. So it's been an ongoing controversy, and it doesn't look good. It looks like this bill will, in fact, get passed, unless maybe the Queen says, no, don't do it. Who knows these days? So here here's some of the more problematic things about the bill that that personally make me cringe in a political human rights way. One of the things about it is that it's just gonna like make everything a little bit more austere and a little bit more scary for criminals. So they want to increase sentencing for people. They want prison sentences to be longer. They don't think that they're long enough at the moment. They want, they want the law to be a deterrent. All that kind of right-wing crap. And very calculatedly and disgustingly, they've been kind of implying that, if we pass this bill, it's going to help women because, these days, if you're the victim of an assault or, something happens to you and it's violence against women, it's really hard to sentence these people to longer sentences. They get 2, 3, 5 years for raping women and hurting women. Well, if we pass this bill, this is for your own good. So really, women and feminists need to support this because this is for your own good. Oh, I hate that kind of doublethink, and the right wing is really good at that always. But at this point in the United Kingdom, they're not even pretending to be even a little bit interested in making this about justice, and social order, because this is not a matter of social order. This is a matter of social tyranny. But look, this is what they're going to do about the protests. So, part of this bill, a lot of it is policing, a lot of it is sentencing, but a lot of it is the right to protest. And there's a whole section of this bill that deals with, and Google it, look it up, and see for yourself, but there's a whole section of this bill that deals with protesters' rights, what is a protest, when is a protest a nuisance, and when is the police allowed to intervene and shut down the protest. And they're basically making it a free-for-all for the police to intervene. A lot of the things that are kind of part and parcel of showing civic protests in a civilized democratic country these days will be completely shut down. A lot of this will be to do with nuisance and noise. So if they can say they're making too much noise, they'll shut you down. You will no longer be able to protest in the vicinity of the Houses of Parliament in the United Kingdom, which is crazy. This is the stuff of dictatorships. The reason why people protest in Parliament Square is because it's symbolic and it's a big gesture and it's important to democracy, so that we can stand right by where the laws are made that affect us and that sign off our future and the future of the generations to come, and we can make a statement because we live in a democracy in which the people have a voice. I'm not talking about riots, I'm talking about peaceful protests. Well, that's off the table now and there's like all kinds of loopholes around it. It's like if it's outside of the Parliament houses, then it can't obstruct vehicular access, but like these tiny streets in London, like everything's tiny, so anything can obstruct vehicular access. Just standing on a street corner obstructs vehicular access. So it's going to be all kinds of things around it. They're going to make it impossible for people to protest. And the reasoning they give behind it, and this is like Priti Patel, including the London Constabulary, the London Police Force, and the kind of like narratives around that are about how, well, in 2019, Extinction Rebellion put London to a standstill, and we couldn't do anything about it because the police aren't allowed to shut down lawful protests that is in keeping with the laws of the land and in keeping with the ideals and morals of democracy, right? So they're really pissed because when Extinction Rebellion was at its height in 2019, a lot of people were on board. The London Underground was affected. All modes of transport, from public transport to traffic, and obviously it made a lot of people angry because they couldn't do their normal, usual corporate business. And I doubt seriously that this really affects the little people like you and me, because we're doing the 9-to-5 thing, aren't we? But like it really affected the bigger people, the people who truly have power over us, because it impeded their ability to make a continuous soulless profit off of our work. So even the fact that like London stopped for half a day back in 2019 really triggered them. And they specifically mention this. Priti Patel mentions this. Other people mention it all the time when they're talking. We're trying to sell this bill to the people of the United Kingdom. Priti Patel is constantly talking about Extinction Rebellion and what a terrible thing that is, and how the police had no force against this. They couldn't do anything against this. And they specifically cite that a lot of this protest law, when it comes to policing and peaceful protests, a lot of it is outdated because it's from 1986. Oh yeah, I forgot, of course, because like that was back in the day, like when the human rights still applied in this country, but they don't anymore, so it's outdated. Dear, oh dear. Incredible. And the 1980s were a really bad time in British history. This is like Thatcherite era 101, and it seems like even that legislation is way too liberal for Priti Patel. Now let's just look into this. Maybe you're a Tory, maybe you're right wing, or if you're not in the United Kingdom, you might just be like a conservative person. You might be all about order and stuff like that. Let's just look into what Priti Patel really thinks and who she truly is. Just to be clear on who is the author of this new legislation that will affect people all around the United Kingdom. Priti Patel did an appearance on a show called LBC. This is a London radio talk show. And mind you, let me be clear, this LBC thing is super right-wing biased. It has a clear, articulated right-wing bias. Everybody knows that. And it has a lot of different people on. It's kind of popular, but it does have a very strong right-wing bias. And here is a very short clip of Priti Patel making an appearance on LBC on one of these shows, talking about BLM and Extinction Rebellion. And I think specifically it's BLM that she addresses in this one. And this is what she really thinks about people who protest.
I don't support protests, and I also did not support the protests that were associated.
You don't support protest?
I didn't support the protest.
Oh, that protest. I thought you said you didn't support protest at all.
This is priceless. This is priceless. The guy is like, what? What? You don't support protests? Even that right-wing biased journalist is like, what are you talking about, Priti Patel? That's crazy. Did you just say that? That's like, you could like, look at his face. It's insane. Priti Patel, you don't support protest? Oh, no. Oh, I don't support protest. Oh, no. I support something. Well, I support protest. It's not this protest. No, Priti Patel, you do not support protests. That was not a Freudian slip. That's what she really thinks. And it just slipped out. She doesn't support protests. Look at her. Look at her. Look at the way that the Tories operate, the way that they cling on to power and authoritarianism at any cost. Look at the way that the Tory government completely smeared BLM protesters last year in the United Kingdom. Completely. I already spoke about Extinction Rebellion, but BLM was just as bad. And the toppling of statues really angered them, the people in government. There's this whole thing about, they could kind of take it when it was like lesser known people, like, this slave owner here, that slave owner there. Again, they're all slave owners, and there's so many such statues all over Europe because that is part of the history of Europe and part of its shameful heritage. That's not up to discussion. I'm not even sure why these a lot of these people on the right kind of want to discuss that it's like not really true. It's true. But when it came to Churchill, this government really took a stance, and Priti Patel personally, clearly, is still affected by that in her heart, or like rather the place in her chest where the heart should be. Because Winston Churchill is a national hero in the United Kingdom. There's like this whole iconography about him, like He's like the conservative side of the legend of JFK or something. Like, he's really, really important to British culture. And because he's like a war hero, because he ran this entire country, and he did a lot of strategizing in World War II in terms of countering the other forces and all kinds of things, right? But Churchill was also the head of this country in the first half of the 20th century. He was responsible for a lot of atrocities that happened in colonial lands. He killed off, he made a decision during World War II that caused the mass starvation of millions of people in India. So here was Churchill in World War II, and again, that is so part and parcel of European culture, and kind of like this like more general kind of constantly self-perpetuating hypocrisy that we see very often, especially in narratives of nationalism. Because here's Churchill, and he's like this war hero because he's fighting against Hitler and all the millions of people that Hitler is killing. But Churchill makes a decision that affects millions of people in India, but it's okay because they're in India, so nobody's gonna know because it's not relevant. It only counts if you kill people in Europe, right? It only counts if it's like you can see it here. Like, it only counts if you can see the bodies. It doesn't count if it's like far away, right? So there's these statues to Churchill, and like, you know, these conservative people in the UK love Churchill, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's like a whole cult of Churchill. They got so fired up by the situation with Churchill that as soon as there was any notice of any kind of anti-Churchill movement from BLM, they put this like massive protection thing over him. This little condom of conservative protection. They encased him in like this little cocoon to protect him from, you know, the kids on the street. And Priti Patel doesn't like it, and now we have this anti-policing bill which will basically outlaw protests, lawful protests. It will de facto outlaw BLM, and it will outlaw Extinction Rebellion, and it will be up to the cops to do what they want. And the cherry on top for this one is that they added, and I'm sure like 100% like Priti Patel wrote this like herself, like she added this herself personally because she doesn't support protests, remember? There's a cherry on top in that bill, and it states that from now on, defacing a memorial is going to be a real crime. Not the kind of, you know, hooliganism crime it's been so far where you might get a fine or something. No more fines. No, if you deface a memorial in the United Kingdom, when this bill gets through, when it's active, you're facing 2 to 10 years in prison. All these statues are memorials, aren't they? Like, anything can be a memorial. But especially all these statues of slave owners, all these statues of people with checkered British colonial pasts, they're all memorials now, don't you worry. If you draw a mustache on Churchill's face, you could go to prison for 10 years. Who in their right mind is going to go out and oppose this government when this bill is passed and risk, obviously there's still going to be people out there and they can't stop us, and people will be going out in the streets because they have a right to protest. Because this is supposedly a democracy. But who in their right mind, who has a child, who has any kind of responsibility, who will go out and support people protesting? Who will really go out and show up? It's the perfect deterrent. Like, if the punishment for protesting in a country of law these days is 10 years in prison for protest. I'm not even talking about throwing a stone at a police officer. I'm not even talking about that. Or calling cops pigs or something, anything that might be even like the slightest bit provocative. I'm just going out and protesting. Or showing your displeasure at a statue that represents violence and that is insulting to you and your heritage. That's 10 years in prison. And how are you going to prove that it wasn't you? If you're in a group of people and they all get taken down for defacing a monument, a memorial. This is horrible and detrimental. And there's been all kinds of critique of this from all kinds of sides, actually. And it's the Labour Party these days is a disaster with Keir Starmer at the head of it. So the kind of opposition they've offered has been kind of lukewarm and not very... It's mainly opposition because they have to, because of public opinion. And public opinion is really strong. And you might not be seeing this all over the news everywhere in the world, but people are still protesting this. So ironically, there's all these protests happening on the streets of the United Kingdom in protest of the anti-protest bill. The hashtag is killthebill. Follow the hashtag. There's been some people within the police force saying that the hashtag in itself is bad because it means, like, the bill in the UK means police. That's like slang for police, so they're saying kill the police. But I don't care about the police. I just want to end this bill. So follow the hashtag. There's people protesting all the time. Yesterday, of course, the day before yesterday was the funeral of Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, and there were massive protests out on the streets. Massive protests for Kill the Bill. And that should tell the government something as well with regards to how people really feel about this. If on such a historic day, the sentiment among the people is to go out and say, you can't do this to us. There's a lot of stuff in this bill that is a breach of international law, human rights, all kinds of things. No question about that. But they don't care. The United Kingdom is on this hellish trajectory into complete anti-democratic hell. And Labour isn't even providing any opposition, so no real hope there, because it's just a light version of conservatism. It's gone back to the Tony Blair days of New Labour, where it's so close to being a conservative party, it might as well be, and the thing that rules it is neoliberal principle. So oh well. So that's the story on the ground. The Socialist Workers' Party followed them as well on Twitter. They're updating people in different parts of the United Kingdom. The SWP, they have communities all over, and all these communities are doing Kill the Bill. They're involved. They're out there on the streets fighting for us. Show them some support if you can, because it's an important matter, and it's a matter of solidarity for us all, wherever you are, whoever you are. Show the British people that we care about them and that we are with them in this incredibly disturbing time. And speaking of the streets of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer had a bit of an incident yesterday, and he was ablaze on Twitter for sure, and just everywhere. Here's what happened. Keir Starmer is, of course, leader of the Labour Party, and he has had a disastrous time of it, really. Mainly because he's just one of those people who basically is a fascist, posing to be the leader of the Labour Party. Okay, maybe I exaggerate a little bit. He's not a literal fascist, but he's definitely a sympathizer in the sense that this is a man who is a former prosecutor in 2000, in the 2000s, I think up to 2008. In 2008, he became director of public prosecutions and head of the Crown Prosecution Service, holding these roles until 2013. That's Keir Starmer. He's at the helm of the Labour Party, which is meant to be at least different, a little bit different to the Conservatives, a little bit like Kamala Harris and in the U.S. He's it's not exactly the same situation because Keir Starmer is not a diverse candidate, but he embodies some of these like ideologies that we see kind of emanating through Kamala Harris. So it's someone who has a past prosecuting people who really throughout his entire career has not upheld the types of ethical beliefs and ethical belonging, really, that is required of a labor person, not least the leader of the Labour Party. He's also clearly a neoliberal capitalist. He doesn't really believe in unions. He doesn't believe in anything. He's a kind of reactionary answer of Labour to Jeremy Corbyn, who, of course, was hated, much maligned, accused of all kinds of horrible things that he didn't do because he was a true Labour candidate. A lot of people still believe that Jeremy Corbyn was extremely too far left. I'm not sure that he was too far left. I think the thing that was disappointing about Corbyn for me is his lack of flexibility, and it's like a double-edged sword because he was inflexible, therefore he never changed, therefore he was at least telling the truth, and he was consistent for like 30-40 years throughout his career. So you can't really you can't fault him for that, but at the same time, he was inflexible on many issues, and he brought a lot of like 1980s anti-Thatcherite thinking in literal terms to the situation that we find ourselves in today in this global world, which I think really failed him, particularly his stance on the European Union, and I think he lost a lot of support by not being a proper leader of the opposition when it mattered, when the British people were voting for Brexit, because Jeremy Corbyn secretly wanted to leave the European Union because he, unlike me, doesn't see any hope in the European Union. He wanted to go it alone. So much so that there was speculation that Jeremy Corbyn voted to leave, even though he was meant, like, he's the opposition, so he's not supposed to vote. He's not supposed to vote leave. He's supposed to be pro-Europe. But he was so bad at being pro-Europe and also, like, you know, to be fair, as much as I stand with Corbyn, that was a terrible thing he did. The fact that he ran such a terrible campaign on purpose was one of the reasons why Brexit happened and why people today are feeling those consequences. So anyway, that's like a really quick introduction to my thinking on Corbyn. There are many things that he stands for that I believe in and that I support him, and he's still the best and only leader in the United Kingdom, don't get me wrong. But I still have a lot of critique when it comes to his strategy from 2016 and beyond. And Keir Starmer, of course, is what Labour loves. So Labour is really Labour in name only. When Corbyn was the Labour leader, there was so much, like, the Labour people really hated him because they stopped being Labour a long time ago with Tony Blair and New Labour and the new kind of narratives of neoliberalism from the 1990s. They don't really care about Labour. They're not pro-union anymore. They only care about their kind of weird neoliberal vision of what it is that they're trying to do, which is not too far away from the Conservatives. It's really similar to what's going on with the Democrats and Kamala Harris, really, because a lot of it is like, you know, it's like the same strategy, the same wars, the same kind of, you know, hatred of people, inherent like disdain for people who don't have a lot of money, etc., etc., etc. It's just like Labour makes it a little cuter, you know. And Corbyn was trying to change that, and they just would not let him. They just would not let him. But he might come back. I believe in that. This is a battle that was lost, not the war. So anyway, Keir Starmer is going viral because he went to a pub. He was like doing the rounds, meeting and greeting people in Bath, in the town square, I guess, or whatever, on the street. You can see it's like a cute part of Bath, and that's a very cute and historic town. And he was kind of talking to people about himself and whatever. And he went to this pub, and the man in this pub went in, like, he didn't go insane. He was brutalized, by the way. That's another part of this clip that I'm about to show you. But the man in the pub basically said, I don't want you in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go away. Like, you're not welcome here, Starmer.
I've been a Labour voter my entire life. You have failed to be the opposition. You have failed to ask whether lockdown was functioning.
Just behind. Can we just
Do you understand?
Shall we go on in?
Thousands of people have died because you have failed to do your job and ask the real questions.
Let's take a look now at a part of this where things go wrong, and one of Keir Starmer's bodyguards brutalizes this man.
He's the landlord. That man is not allowed in my pub. No, Lord. I'm not going to physically hurt him. That man. That's assault. I am not bothering you. I am not bothering him. That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Calm yourself down. Get out of my pub.
That guy should sue. He should sue. He was in his, that's his pub. And this bodyguard brutalizes him inside his own pub. This is like the stuff of like, this is like The Godfather or something. This is not UK 2021. Oh no, wait, it is. Because we're regressing. Because of this horrible, irresponsible government and the Labour Party, which has not provided any kind of satisfactory answer to it and has not been any kind of opposition to it whatsoever. Yeah, people hate Starmer because he's despicable. He's just so, he's so slimy on every level. And you can tell it like miles off that he's a career politician. He doesn't care about Labour, and he doesn't care about the people of the United Kingdom. And good for that guy. And I will do whatever I can. And obviously, I only have like 6 subscribers, but I will do whatever I can to have him come on the show and talk to me, because this is the kind of civic engagement that inspires me and that I think is at the heart of civilization, democracy, everything that we stand for, right? Not just the European Union, not just what it means today should mean to be European or transcontinental or a lefty or whatever it is. This guy inspires me so much. He stands for everything that I love, like just like the idea of such engagement and passion about these issues, the fact that like he was straight on it, he didn't, you know, he did not flinch, he was like on it. This guy is all about democracy, freedom of speech. He loves democracy, and I love him for it, and I will invite him to the show, and I will update you on whether I was successful, because I'm sure he'll be doing the media rounds. And I really hope he sues, because he should. So naturally, once I finished the video, I came across a little bit more information about this Starmer controversy, and a bit more stuff has come out. Number one, the Labour side of it, so like the Starmer camp and the Starmer like fan base, I guess, have come out with this theory or allegation that the reason this guy got brutalized was because he was being aggressive towards a female staff member who was there. But there's no footage of it, conveniently. So as you can see in the video, there's like more than one person who was there with a who was taking different videos. There's different angles to like the different takes. There were plenty of witnesses. I don't see any female staff members there. And I don't want to judge people just based on their appearance, but I really don't see any female staff members there. And maybe there's video of it somewhere, but if the Starmer camp is making that allegation or leaking that information out, then surely they have witnesses or evidence. Because so far, all we've seen is a bunch of guys and thugs surrounding Starmer and brutalizing that poor get out of my pub guy. That's what I see. I don't see a female staff member being assaulted or in any way aggressed. If that did happen, that is contemptible and that is not okay of the get out of my pub guy. I'm not like, frankly, I don't believe this story. I think that's fabricated, and I think they're just scrambling for something to say because it's gone so viral, and just the images of like someone not wanting Starmer in their pub, like this, like the will of the people and the people speaking their mind is too much for labor to handle. So I think that's what's happening with that one. I'd love to see the footage. I'd love to see some evidence. The other thing that's kind of like a focal point right now is that this get out of my pub guy is a COVID denier. Which, okay, shame on him. I'm not sure that he's like a full-on COVID denier. I think he's just one of those like people who don't believe in lockdown and don't believe that like social distancing is helping. One of those like fringy people. And that's fine. He has a right to hold an inaccurate, dangerous, stupid opinion. That's his democratic right. I've seen people saying things like, oh, well, serves them right, or these like COVID deniers are so crazy, they're so insane, like that, like obviously if he denies COVID, then he must, like his behavior must have been the thing that provoked this situation. That is just total crap. Like, I totally disagree with that. I'm still with this guy, and I still believe that he believes in democracy and loves democracy. Just because he's wrong, just because he's lost himself ethically and morally, doesn't mean that Keir Starmer's bodyguard gets to brutalize him again. Like, it's so simple, isn't it? And even if he were a Holocaust denier, Keir Starmer's bodyguards still don't have the right to brutalize him. Even if he were a massive misogynist, racist, whatever it is, that is not a reason to brutalize that person. I'm sorry. And I know like a lot of people hold some fringe beliefs on this, and some people still believe that we can achieve a better world and a loving, equal world through violence, and it's just not true. So a character assassination and someone like this using like COVID is I'm just not interested in that. It's like, it's the principle of the thing, and it's the fact that this is like the Labour Party leader. This is one of the most important political positions in this entire country, the leader of the opposition. And he like literally used his thug to pacify this citizen of his country, his own citizen, his own people. He has no problem doing that. This is like the career prosecutor coming out, the fascism coming out. Not cool. Like he'll say, oh, well, we had to do it because he was a COVID denier. And that's today. What are they going to say tomorrow? Is it going to be because like they were like a communist, or was it because it was like an aggressive woman? Oh, well, she was a Karen. We had to pacify her. No, that is not cool. I still think he loves democracy, and I would still have him on this show. This does not change anything for me. other than I'm obviously like concerned about the people he interacts with, whatever his views are. But so that was one thing. And the guy did say, like, he did say to Starmer in the conversation, if you remember in the video, he did say, you let so many people die. So he obviously understands that there's something going on. He obviously is on board with that. I think he's questioning the way that lockdown happened. I thought what he meant was that, like, the lockdowns were not implemented correctly and quickly enough because the powers that be, people like Boris Johnson, the Tories, they're only interested in corporations and the financial district, and they wanted business to continue at the cost of human life, and Starmer did nothing. I thought maybe that's what that guy meant, but I guess what he meant was something else. He has some other theory regarding lockdown and why people are dying, whatever it is. Again, actually, that's irrelevant because he has a right not to be brutalized by the leader of the Labour Party in his own country. It's very simple. Being rude, obnoxious, again, not a reason to be brutalized. Let's be clear. That's fascism, not democracy. And finally, apparently he is the co-owner of the pub. He's not the sole owner. And the other owner has come out saying that, like, they don't endorse what this guy said and that, like, he would have welcomed Starmer. And I saw some further information about this. And apparently Starmer had staked out the joint like beforehand, so they had actually arranged to be in that pub. Like, this is like a deeper like drama about like the city of Bath, UK, and like the internal workings of the high street there, because apparently Starmer had arranged with the other guy who is the other pub owner to go visit. But unfortunately encountered the other pub owner, the other co-owner, who is the get out of my pub guy, as he was going in, and this kind of chaos happened because of this like bad management, bad planning, all of that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of layers of incompetence and entitlement and stupidity involved in this entire thing. At the end of the day, it's two men of privilege arguing about things that might not affect the rest of the population. I don't know what that guy's situation is, the get out of my pub guy. He is, I guess he's not totally working class if he owns a pub, but I don't know his situation. I don't know what's going on with that pub. And I understand the frustration, and I understand the desperation and the grief in people, even people who deny COVID in this way. When people say, well, lockdown's not necessary, is because they've been affected. Their business, their livelihood has been affected by the lockdown, obviously pubs, restaurants, etc. And there's no real government help. This guy isn't working for a big corporation. He's not getting furloughed. He's desperate. And when you're in a desperate place, when you're in a place where no one is helping you and no one seems to care, you turn towards desperate theories and desperate ways of thinking. And I 100% understand that. So I would hold off on the whole hate on this guy for being a horrible COVID denier. That's somehow the worst sin against humanity these days. As long as he's not acting on it in reckless ways, that does not make him a bad person. That shows me that we live in a sad, sad society and in a sad moment in history where people are left to their own devices. They are abandoned by the governments of this world to kind of just remain in their misery like this. And then these types of ways of thinking, these conspiracies and all kinds of things come out of people because they have nothing left to hold on to. What would have been a solution for this guy is if this government implemented a proper social program for the duration of the lockdowns, and if they had a security net. for people like him, and for business owners, for small business owners, and for all people. Like, maybe a universal wage, or a universal benefit that people can access regardless of their situation. People's lives change. People's situations change. There's so much shame attached to government help as well, especially in the United Kingdom. There's the narratives around it are just vicious and disgusting. So whatever this man is going through, this is those are the symptoms of late stage capitalism in extreme global crisis. It doesn't make him evil, and it doesn't make it okay for thugs to brutalize him. Desperate people who grasp at these desperate ideologies, we should help them, not judge them. That was the European show. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. It's all very new. I'm still developing it. So all the more, thank you. I hope this will be your new one-stop shop for European politics, society, and the occasional scandal. I trust that you are doing well, that you are keeping well, and I hope to see you next time.